kindred of Munich were typically and also historically Byzantine, a stubborn and prideful lot. Having to flee Europe and the wrath of the Tremere brings me back to the Isles, and through the cosmopolitan Camarilla-controlled city of London, ruled by the high clan kindred of the vampiric ivory tower for hundreds upon hundreds of years. Above it all lurks Mithras, a Methuselah of Clan Ventru, millennia-spanning leader, indoctrinating kin and kine alike. Under the grand imperialistic buildings that transform the London skyline, the poor struggle in slums that barely support life. Each railway line carving through another area of housing for the working class of the city, forcing them into greater overcrowding and squalor. The rich aristocracy live a life of pleasure and decadence, growing fat on the ruthless exploitation of the industry. Whilst here, I can almost understand the Camarilla's need for authority and enforced order in their damned world. Not that they would ever accept one such as I. Here, it is not just crapulous, stifling politics and arbitrary decrees to uphold old traditions, although there is all that twaddle. Kindred here must be extremely subtle and cautious to escape notice. In this age of gaslight starts to prevail on every street, the masquerade is not to be taken lightly, but it can be stretched very thin indeed, apparently, before it breaks. Forensic science is still in its infancy, and London Metropolitan's ability to investigate or curb supernatural activity is limited to non-existent. At best, the kindred still act with almost complete impunity. Meanwhile, the number of kindred in the city grows as the population exponentially does. From a human population of 2.5 million, it has grown to almost 6 million in the last 50 years. Taking into account the Camarilla's population policy, 1 kindred per 10,000 mortals in rural towns, and 1 kindred per 100,000 in cities. It has increased the number of kindred in London can conservatively support to almost 60. The actual number is probably higher. The deprivation and overcrowding in slums mean easy feeding for careful kindred, and in the extensive sewer system and underground system lurks the mass of human detritus and the gutter-dwelling 𝓥𝓲𝓬𝓷𝓻𝓲. What I believe to be the darker side of nature is barely restrained by law and legal imperative of society, not by ethics of the few of us that generally care about morality. But in this age, newer approaches exist, and at some point, I hope, science and rational thinking may explain it all. Although, of course, it must be done in a way that does not violate proper behaviour, so the Tremere can go to hell. I yearn for the freedom offered in what the high society kindred call the barbarous lands, lit by candle and moonlight, where the unbreakable strictures of birth and class hold no weight. As I relish that part of my nature with more increment, yet I must, for now, and while my fleeting humanity persists, find my intrigue with the civilized lands lit by gaslight, to be uncompromised Victorian customs and the kindred that hold such knowledges. Just as the thick fog unwraps the city in the blanket that obscures its true face, the kindred of the area conceal their true faces behind masks of civilized behavior and hypocritically pious demeanor. Amidst the fog, behind the facades of gentility and civilization, lurks an animal in every mortal immortal that is willing to break through the veneer when the need arises. I see all the faces in the shop windows, full of light and life, always the outsider looking in, the dark side of the glass. Contrary to myth, in the reflection you can't run from what you are, you can't hide all the pain, and sadness stares back at me. Everyone from pardoned spiritists to occultists to us ourselves has had a theory on what we truly are. Theories ranging from twisted religious interpretations we are imperfect angels of wrath, demons punishable by possession, to secular and scientific ones, where the story of Adam's sons is merely an allegory of nomadic and pastoral tribes. Our condition is a semi-mythical explanation for a disease older than time itself, are the theories. Indeed, it is hard for kindred to find a theory in which we are not an offence to nature or antithetical to everything the world stands for, fundamentally abhorrent to our own bodies, not because we must feed on blood or cannot bear the touch of sun, but because we are an offence to the natural order. Not so with us 𝓥𝓮𝓷𝓬𝓽𝓸𝓻𝓲𝓪. I believe that the other clans have just drifted far too long into esoteric and eccentric pursuits and focus. Our family curse will inexorably destroy any notion of innocence. The dark machines of industry progress will grind the world, and the hopes of the poor but worthy into dust. The corrupt aristocracy will laugh and spurn the soiled dove of peace as they shovel more blackness like the coal chute into their hearts. Brave investigators of mystery, even with the clarity of science behind them, will be forced amidst the defeat of the overmastering power of nature. Even with us and all our disciplines and strength of age can be helpless against the worldly powers, elders too strong and well connected to fight monsters of the dark wilds, thaumaturges who command strange forces and even mortal hunters. I've already drawn the attention of a hunter, unfortunately. He threw a paraffin bomb into my rented haven downtown in the midst of the night. Although I thought he would chase me through the cobbled streets, yet he relented and did not pursue. How the hunters can be so bold here as to attack kindred without the safety of broad daylight on the side is beyond me, but I think he must be a particularly reckless individual. He is more used to using these steam-powered tools and contraptions I have never seen before, but what really concerns me are the powers this man possessed, abilities I thought possible for only us immortals or granted from our immortal blood. Knowledge isn't always useful if you know you're eventually going to perish. Relative immortality a burden to bear, by such to perish, but such to also cherish for even to our limited but longer time. So, I stalk the soot-filled streets of old London town, searching not just for my next meal, but for others of my kind, looking for insight and information on the nightly happenings. All I have gleaned for now is that he may be connected to the Rosicrucian secret society, or worse still, connected to the plenipotentiary of Her Majesty's government. A secret even with secret societies and occultist elite gentlemen clubs, they are one of the few groups that give the Camarilla cause for concern. But I must count my mixed blessings. Enforce a masquerade without me, my brethren, when we cannot even touch the heart of strangers, you scorn the truth between the lies. There is no stairway to the light, there is no answer, heaven knows, but there is a flower of the night, for all eternity. Sometimes I feel the tendency to go overboard with my poetic license. I do not have to be a Toreador to appreciate things of beauty, and I know my Victorian poetic nature is soon to die and fade, replaced by the pragmatism of survival and cynicism of the modern times. Although the United Kingdom remains the centre of the empire, Alexander of Victoria's so-called age, something I have noticed since my return to the European wanderings. The islands themselves exist in a state of isolation from the rest of the continent. Much of the significance across the social spectrum is either muted or missed completely by the majority of Britons. Many of the elder kindred still under the aegis of the courts when Britain was known to them as the Baronies of Avalon, deal with the continental counterparts only when necessary, observing the phrase bemusedly from the safe distance of the Channel. For their part, it seems the kindred of Europe hardly appreciate the arm's length of their British cousins. I must lament that hiding my bestial features beginning to manifest means I cannot freely take a constitutional walk down the melting pot of London streets. But like the fog of London, time will obscure the Victorian Age's antiquated beauty, so I must evocate what I can. Vaulted warehouses rise into the skies like chimneys that belch dark smoke into the air, dwarfing the small offices and dwellings around them. Scents assail my night creature nostrils: wine, spices, sweat and wood smoke, animals, tobaccos and paraffin oil. And the air is full of sounds of a dozen tongues. Some I hear are animals, but most are citizens. Some obnoxious, some unusual, some distinctly foreign. Traders and travellers from all parts of the world do mingle, talk and work well on to the night. The streets are far quieter after dark, of course, unlike the hustle and bustle I can hear through the walls of my haven per day. Yet the public houses are still full of light and life, with burly dockhands and refined gentlemen who wish to spend their earnings in a pleasant and decadent a manner as possible. The Industrial Revolution is changing the face of humanity almost overnight. Old fears abate fast with the stuffy feudal-minded Camarilla elders that occupy the city. The knights of the kindred kings who held the mortal populace in fear is a thing of history, only heard tale of. Many members of this knight society take advantage of the cultural occultist zeitgeist and the new age of scientific discovery. Apparently, it is a good time to be undead. Our last halcyon age.
Good evening. My name is Julian Stone. Welcome to the House of Tremere. I'm going to be telling you a little about our story. But until that time, you are welcome. Shortly after my birth, my family moved to Brighton, my beloved Brighton, where my father sought work to support his family. However, I was drawn back into the crime and the toxicity of the capital, and I longed to be back in Brighton. My beloved Brighton. I shall return, but I shall die in London. I was born in the spirit of the Renaissance, the creativity, the art, and soon I was to be noticed by the oldest convention of them all, and I was brought into the most intellectual and gifted house of the Camarilla, the Tremere. One of the higher clans. Clever, calculating, I quickly shot through the ranks to become Lord. I really rose to power quickly as I managed to borrow an ancient elixir from the South American tribes in Peru, engineering and manipulating the Spanish conquests to take, well, whatever I desired, keeping the greatest secrets to myself, of course, and the few trusted acolytes. This allowed me to build up chantries all over Europe. I keep to the Camarilla policy, but I do not care for the hierarchy of the Tremere, and I keep the greatest secrets to myself. I am a power unto my own. A chantry is a safe haven for that of the kindred, a place of solace, refuge, safety and learning. Libraries and laboratories. You will see how important that will come to me later. The Victorian age, as we are now, has proved very, very good for the Tremere due to the understated interest in the occult. It kind of pleases me. I capitalised on this almost ignorance as I could more openly practice my sorcery without dropping the masquerade, which is essential for our well-being. I was in the Chantry in Munich in 1863. 1863. Yeah. Yes. 1863. And that was when the incident happened. Our clan would often use the more animalistic clans to work in perpetual servitude to us. As they say, if you need to train a dog, you need to kick it. The gargoyles, they're base and they are savage, and they need to be controlled lest they wreak havoc on society. And I offered one such gangrel safety, security and learning. But I had an ulterior motive. Why get your hands dirty when someone else can do the work for you? These creatures need to be kept off the streets. But that gangrel happened to brutally murder a young lady. Well, nothing unusual there. However, this young lady was connected to a very powerful and wealthy family. And this saw the start of our problems. So, with the turning of this young lady, people were onto us. The masquerade had dropped. This foolish gangrel that could not control his urges has exposed us all. Each chantry, each house is now on the wanted list. Retribution had to be sought. I lost my chantry. It was blazed in an uprising that I haven't seen since the Salem witch hunts. I will have my revenge for my loss. People are going to die. Servant! The Tremere story is not over. There is more to be written. Until then. However, I have no time for revenge. I have much more pressing needs. Support of my Tremere, my beloved Tremere, and building a new Chantry and re-establishing ourselves as an essential pillar in the Camarilla. I shall be returning back to my beloved Brighton, a place that I love so dearly, and it is my right, since I am the oldest unliving resident. The Tremere may have faltered because of the careless actions of a kangaroo mongrel. But we shall rise. We shall rise again. Now, at this time, I bid you farewell, and I'm sure it has been a great pleasure talking to me, obviously being so refined and revered as we are. Leave.